Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Danita Cummins, and today I am super excited to be joined by my friend and personal mentor, Dr. Hope Zoeller, as we talk about her heart for building leaders, the qualities that make a good leader, and what tactical leadership tools are needed to recession-proof your company. Dr. Zoeller is founder and president of Hope, helping other people excel. And for the past 17 years, she's been consulting with organizations on leadership development. She's a professor at Spalding University, and she's a doctorate in leadership education. Hope co-authored 2 books, Hope for Leaders Unabridged, Volume 1, and Hope for Leaders in the 2020s, New Issues to Face, New Problems to Solve, and New Hope for the Future. Let's get started. Doing things alone is entirely overrated. We all need a community to thrive. And that's why I'm part of an online community of writers and speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneurs called Creatives. And I love it. In the years since I joined this community, I've launched new ideas, and I finally executed the dreams that sat on the shelf for years. Seriously. And I was able to do this because of the outstanding group of mentors, exceptional training, and encouraging mastermind groups with my new friends who did and continue to give me invaluable feedback. Oh, and not to mention all the fun, because we have had lots and lots of fun. Have you ever said, I want to write a book? Or do you want to use your voice for the exciting world of podcasting? If so, Called Creatives is your best resource for up-to-the-minute industry training, expert advice, live coaching, and peer support like no other. Best-selling authors and speakers Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle lead this community with a no-competition mission, and it shows. So join my friends and I in the Called Creative community. Head to my show notes, danitacummins.com/podcast, and click the link to get all the details to join. I promise you won't regret it. I look forward to seeing you in the community and watching you grow. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Danita Cummins, and I am joined today by my good friend and my personal mentor. She's also an author and a speaker and a consultant and so many other things. She's the founder and president of Helping Other People Excel, Hope, which is a firm that specializes in facilitating leader success at every level of organization. So I wanted to introduce you to Dr. Hope Zoeller. She's my good friend. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Danita. I am very excited to be able to have this conversation with you today. So again, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Hope and I were just chatting about all the life things before we got started. So we'll try to continue that conversation today. Like I said, Hope and I met back in probably, was it like 2015? Or
around, I would say that's fair. 2015, 2016. Yes.
Yeah, somewhere in there. And she was teaching a leadership development cohort for U.S. Army Special Operations Command or U.S. Special Operations Command. And she was one of my instructors. So I had the pleasure of sitting in her classroom learning about, I went back through my books just to see, I still have them. I think we talked about conflict management.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
We did proactive communication.
Proactive communication. That's exactly right. Yes. And then how not to be a dysfunctional leader. I think. Was that a topic that you remember teaching?
How to avoid being a dysfunctional leader.
Avoid being a dysfunctional leader. Yeah. So I still have all of those. So I still reference them from time to time. So, and since then, she's been my friend and mentor. And I will admit, she was one of the first 3 people I called when I said, Hope, I think I'm going to start a business. Can you help me? So I value her time and her, not just her leadership development and her skills, but just her as a person. So that's, why I'm excited for her to be here today. So do you want to start, Hope, by telling us a little bit about your background and why you have such a heart for leadership?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I really do have to go back just to childhood. Where did this, gift or not? I guess it has evolved to a gift. I don't know if I would have thought about it then. Is to when I was younger, and my favorite thing to do was to play teacher. And I would line up all my stuffed animals.
Oh my gosh.
I would have them take tests. And I would grade them, and I had my sister's animals come to class. And normally, in full disclosure, my sister's animals did not get as good of grades as my stuffed animals did. But I don't know, there was just something in me as a young child that I just always found great joy in teaching and in helping other people. And so, fast forward that into, high school, I was very active involved in like student council, National Honor Society. I just enjoyed being around people and helping wherever I could. But I would say to you that probably my greatest love for that came when I got my first job out of college and in corporate America and got put into training in a customer service center. And not that that was my ideal thing to want to train. But I was like, this is great. You get to be around people, you get to share knowledge, you get to help make them better.
Yeah.
Help make them, the best versions of themselves. And so spent 14 years doing that in a corporate setting. And then after I finished graduate school, met somebody there that had his own leadership development business. And he said, would you ever think about coming and joining this? And I was like, well, I don't know. I was safe in this corporate space of everything my parents told me you need to have benefits and all those types of things. And so I thought, you know what? I think this is the right move. And then at the time, where I was at, they really did not always believe in you being where, your talents were served best. It was more about where they needed you to be when you were in management. I'm sure you can connect to that.
Yes.
It's like you're just told to go. This is your duty. This is what you need to do. And so, that was fine until it wasn't. And I thought, I really know where I want to be. And the life has been very much a jungle gym. It wasn't a straight line to do all of this, but I look back and everything was kind of leading me up for this. So I did that for him for 5 years. And then I just decided, I was going through the breakup of relationship with my husband. We were with each other for almost 18 years and just, I don't know. It's kind of like I blew my life up all at one time. I just decided I'm going to end this relationship. I'm going to end this relationship professionally. And I'm going to put out my shingle for my own thing. And so I started Hope back in 2010. And it's been an amazing road because, as I said, I feel like all of my training has really led me up to doing this. And there's no greater joy than I get than when I can really help somebody, as I said, become the best version of themselves. Because I think so often in life and in society, we are really kind of forced into thinking what should be good for us. Yeah. And I know for a period of time in my life that there was that for me, even in relationships. Well, you should be happy in this relationship. You have this, or you should be happy in this job. And I, just now helping leaders. And sometimes by doing that, I get them on another course. Not that that's the goal when you're coaching is to have them go, but it may be somewhere else in the organization. They realize this is where they can be the better version of themselves, the better leader. Yeah. And just being able to help people make that connection. And, I told somebody yesterday that I just started coaching. I'm like, I'm not here to give you answers.
Yes.
I'm just really here to ask you questions. I'm here to sort through options for you. And I'm here to help you have confidence in the best that you have to give and offer. Yeah. And so it's just been, as I said, I can't imagine what else I would be doing if I weren't doing this. I think I would be doing it in some capacity anyway. And even when I retire, I think I will still be enjoying this, being at teaching, continuing to teach as an adjunct in college and just helping people have self-discovery. And I know you can relate to this. You're doing this as well. It's just having somebody guide you. And I can't say early on I had that guide necessarily. I had pieces of guides. Yeah. But I look back now and it's like, oh, if I would have just had somebody that believed in me and supported me beyond my parents and, my now husband and, some good managers along the way. But it's just like finding those people that can really help you get where you want to be.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And you talk about this in your new book, The Hope for Leaders in the 2020s. And I think one of the parts there that I found interesting was you put that statistic in there that 90% of people in business lack natural leadership skills. And I thought that was a pretty staggering number, right? But I can see that just like you're talking about it, it's almost a mindset that we're not raised to think we, not deserve, because I hate to use that word, like we deserve things, but it's not even I really don't think that most people enter into the market space. They don't enter into, college thinking about finding those things for themselves and that leadership, and their role and their unique design matters. And it's a beautiful thing, right? And that finding a place for them to fit in. So what do you think with your research and just the things that you've done, why do you think that is that, such a large number of people don't have leadership skills? Why do you think that is?
It's a combination of things. I think, and I saw this in corporate America and, in your background, you might have witnessed this as well, is that it goes back to that, people telling you what you should be doing, and so I saw so many people get tapped on the shoulder to take a leadership role. And they weren't really sure that that's exactly what they wanted to do or be, but it didn't seem optional. So they go into it and it's miserable for them. It's miserable for their people. Not a great thing for the organization. And I see why people get tapped because they are amazing in what they're doing. But I think what's often missed is what is amazing and what you do well and what you're talented at one level is not the same thing that is going to make you amazing and talented at a leadership level. And,
That's
you know,
right.
I know that from getting promoted, you know, from being a peer to then managing my peers, there was this huge gap of stuff that I didn't know. I mean, it's a different skill set. And some people have absolutely no desire to do that. And, you know, when you put somebody into that situation that doesn't really want to be there and doesn't feel like they have a choice, you know, it's not all on them that it's their fault for that happening. And I think second to that is I've noticed through the years in organizations when the economy gets bad, when the recession looks like it's going to, whatever it is, the first two things that generally get cut are training and marketing.
Sure. Yeah.
And to me, in a downtime, that's when you really need to be investing in those two things, especially the training. Yeah. And it's like, how are you developing those leaders? Because there are some people that are just naturally good at being a leader. That doesn't mean that they still don't need to develop themselves, but there are others that they have to so intentionally work at doing that. And if they haven't had good examples along the way,
right,
then how do they actually know to do that? And in worst case scenario, I've seen this through the course of my career, they get promoted. So they're not great leaders, but the organization doesn't really know what to do with them. So they just keep kind of moving them along. And there's a lot happening in the wake of their leadership.
Yeah.
And, you know, people leave that. And so, you know, to me, if an organization isn't looking at that, if there's a particular area that is a high turnover, I guarantee you can connect that back to a leader. And, you know, what is he, she, or they doing or not doing? And then how does the organization take on that responsibility to develop that person? And, you know, not only the organization, but as an individual, as a leader, the biggest thing is self-awareness. So how am I checking in and finding out how I'm doing? Because I can be working really, really hard going north, and I turn around and there's nobody behind me because my team needs me south. And then, you know, some of this is on me getting feedback. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of, you know, when I'm doing coaching of doing some type of 360 assessment, because, you know, is your self-perception, you're in alignment with other people's perception of you? Because like I said, it doesn't really matter if you think you're doing a great job if it's not connecting with people. And, you know, how are you continually checking in and not being afraid to ask the hard questions and say, you know, am I serving you? You know, is there anything I do that motivates you that demotivates you? Is there anything I can do better? But there are some leaders that are so strapped in the day-to-day, the tactical, the heads down task that, you know, they don't think about looking up. And, you know, to me, it's so much, yes, leadership is about the process. More importantly, it's about the people.
Right.
And what are you doing to develop yourself to help your people be better? And if you're not doing it for you, it becomes very challenging for you to do it for others.
Yeah, I see that too. And I think that's maybe not the myth, because I think there's a lot on leadership versus management, right? We could talk probably about that forever and what leadership is and isn't. But I think that's the key piece, especially like, you know, why I kind of started the podcast and where my heart is just for people to understand that leadership is that it's the people. It is about you being entrusted with the care and safekeeping of another person. And yes, you do that in order to make your organization team effective, right? You accomplish a common goal. So yes, it's a tool, but it's kind of, you know, like used in the hands, you know, wielded in the right hand, you know, produces great things. Wielded in a different hand produces a negative result. And I think that's that part that I feel like someone coming in, you know, new, not having leadership training, not really knowing. I think that's the message that people need to, you know in the beginning. And then it is, yes, you're inundated with tactical leadership. I think that's what you said. And you write that in your book, like about tactical leadership, the boots on the ground stuff. But that is not more important than, or at the expense of, the people. Right? The hearts and minds of the people that are with you. Because like you said, if you just stay focused on tactical leadership every day, you'll wake up one day and, you know, everybody will be gone, or your work and culture will be so toxic that, you know, invariably, then are you effective? Right? Are you, you know, that's, you know, probably you won't be if you've lost that lens, you know. So I think that was really, really important. And I also thought the other piece that in your book, when you talked about 60% of the employees leave their companies because of bad bosses or weak leadership. So now as we're entering this, like, potential recession, right? We're sitting on this would-be recession or whatever this is going to be. And then we still have all of this post-pandemic stuff that's out there for who knows how long. How do you think business leaders should address that? So we talked about training and stuff, but is there, and self-awareness, but what do you think business leaders should do to consciously see that, hey, 60% of your employees could potentially leave the company during a recession? That's going to be a bad, deal. So how do they address that?
I think it's making sure that there's constant flow of communication with your teams and encouraging, your leaders at every level to make sure that they are engaging in a regular basis on that. And I love this whole stay interview that's come up. And, so it's too late when it's an exit interview.
Yes.
I've lost that person because their line, it's been crossed for whatever reason, they're gone. So, just checking in and making sure that we're doing the things that our employees need. And not that, just because I have a huge wish list as an employee that I get everything I want. But sometimes there's such low-hanging fruit with some of the things that leaders need to do. And, I think coming out of all of this, I will tell you that I think why we're seeing this, I've heard it called the Great Resignation, the Great Rethink. Yes. I mean, there's multiple names. And it was funny because I was at a conference where somebody raised his hand and he was like, how in the world did the word great get in front of that? Because it's not great.
Yeah.
It was like, fair point. But, I think, and I'm seeing it from my world, so this is, I'm generalizing here in the context of what I have been experiencing, is after the last couple of years, people have not much tolerance for organizations that are not willing to meet them halfway with things. And I mean with flexibility, with developing them. And when it comes to leadership, absolutely. They have no more tolerance for someone who doesn't offer those things. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to work for somebody like that anymore. And, whereas in the past, I mean, I know I have over the course of my career, I stayed because I just didn't feel like I had choices. I didn't feel like I could quit. And now we're seeing people that they don't even have another job.
Right.
But they just know they can't stay in the current environment that they are in. So, as an organization, how are you holding leadership accountable to check in with people? Right. And just make sure that they are, what they need. And if you can't provide that, then what does that mean? Can you help them get something else? And it's just not leaving them on an island by themselves anymore. That's just not going to work. I mean, they want collaborative environments. They want to have flexibility. Lots of them want to work from home, but that doesn't mean they're not working. That doesn't mean they don't want to be part of the team.
That's right.
So it's how do we adapt to that? And the leaders that I have noticed are having the most challenging time with this adapting are the ones that before the pandemic were the serious micromanagers. So their leadership skills were more management skills than leadership skills. And so, that release of I can't see you every day, you have, well, you didn't have a choice. But then now there are people trying to go back to exactly the way it was, and you can't.
Right. Yeah.
You can't. The world looks very different. And I don't know any organization that doesn't look different.
Right. That's right.
After having gone through this. So I say, do kind of like a post-pandemic look. And this is a perfect time to do that because I'm hopeful that 2023, we're going to be leaving some of these things behind, but not behind in that we haven't learned from it.
That's right.
So what are we going to take that was the best of what happened? What were some of the things that weren't even working before the pandemic hit? And we made adjustments and now these are new things and we want to pull them forward. And, I just think having real conversations with your team and having them help create that environment is going to become critical because the days of just being able to dictate and have monologues with your team versus dialogues, I just don't think the workforce today is, again, going to be tolerant of that. And you're seeing it in the numbers. You're seeing it in the numbers of people leaving positions.
Yeah, I did too. That was my experience with a recent, company. The same thing. It was, hey, come back to work. And I think it had a lot to do with, we had learned that we could work remotely, in this one particular situation. And it really allowed just on the remote work piece, but it allowed people who didn't work a traditional 9 to 5 because they're, working international and they're working across time zones and they're working, they may have a call at 2:00 in the morning with a company, with their team members who are in Africa or wherever. So they needed that flexibility. I mean, really, just if we're caring about the person, right, their whole life, total person concept, then it made sense that they didn't need to be in a staff meeting, 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock. It's like, hey, you come to the 8 o'clock huddle. And then if you're going to take a nap at 9 or 10, because you've been up since 2, as long as you get your stuff done by the end of the day, you take care of people, like it's okay. But I saw this mindset of it, a lot of, more rigid, kind of fixed mindset people saying, no, we have to be in the office. And that really started to, show that, like you're saying, like, I'm not sure these companies really understand the need to be agile, the need to take these lessons that we have learned and really say, like, hey, this is the way we've always done it, but there's an opportunity for us to create a better culture, to create, to give life, to really help, not just say on paper that we care about your life, but actually make decisions that enable you to take care of family and do the things that you need to do and still be a part of the team and still support the mission. But I have seen that too. Yeah. The people,
Yes.
the companies that did that, at least in my lens with, a lot on the DoD side, but those companies that really embrace that model, I see those are the ones that kind of made it through the pandemic and, are still doing well and thriving. And so that I think that's a good point too for other companies as we move into this next recession of whatever it's going to be.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. And so we talked a little bit about tactical leadership. How do you define that? Which I love that term because I say that sometimes, tactical leadership. I say tactical accountability. That's the word that I typically use because I'm like, how do you put accountability into action? So how do you define tactical leadership? What does that mean? And how does that work?
So for me, a bit, yes, it is getting, kind of into as I just mentioned, kind of into the processes with things. But I've kind of shifted my thought on the whole tactical leadership thing. And I now say intentional leadership. Because I think, tactical is being strategic about how you're doing something. You're not haphazardly making choices. You're taking in the data. You're looking at that. You have a plan.
Yeah.
But I think tactical more along the lines of the processes about things or the task about things. And then when I think about the intentionality or intentional leadership, I think it's more about the people side of it. So I think tactical is being intentional, but it's really not only about the processes, but it's so much about your people. Do you have the right people in place?
Right.
Are they being able to be their best selves? I mean, when you look around, how are you developing them? How are you delegating things to them? For yourself, are you working on the right things? Or are you stuck in the too much day-to-day weed part of it? And I just recently started coaching an individual, and this individual is struggling because they just got promoted to a higher level and they are feeling that they are not accomplishing anything. Because they're so used to coming out of, there's a task list 1 through 10 every day. This is what I do. I go home and I feel really good about it. Right. But this individual also knows that there's so much more that they need to be doing at a higher level right now. But that higher level is not making them feel that sense of completion like the task did.
Yeah.
So it's like, looking around, and before as a leader, you take on something, just really taking a moment and asking yourself this question: is this the most important thing I should be working on? Right now.
Right.
And, so call it tactical or intentional. It's just like, I can't just be picking up something because this makes me feel good because I'm going to check this box off today. Yeah. It's like, I should be having someone else do this because I need to be working on the vision or, whatever it is, but the bigger picture things.
Yeah, I think that's easy to get in that trap, right? Because we gravitate to the things that we're good at and the things that are comfortable to us. I know when I first transitioned from being kind of a solo, warrior, and then went into the position of leading people in that next rung of my career, whatever, it was a process for me because there were certain things that I was good at that the team maybe didn't have the same strengths or experience in. And so I would gravitate to grab those. So you said empowerment and, delegate. But what do you do in a situation where you're a leader and you've got these day-to-day tasks and then you turn around and, like maybe you try to delegate or you try to, that your team member needs like professional development in this area, that kind of stuff. And they're just kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm pretty content and happy with my little sphere. I like my bowl. I've got my things. And what do you do then as a leader? Because you can't disconnect, right? I mean, you can't just say, well, they don't want to grow, so I can't grow them. But do you see that in your leadership, like teaching and training in this weird kind of gray space? And how do you navigate that?
I do. And then, that becomes the question, is this person a good fit for this job? And not that the ultimate goal is to send this person away.
Right.
But if this role is calling for the development of, you taking on more things and you doing more things, then wouldn't it be great if you could wake up every day and be like, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I mean, So it's sitting down and having that conversation and communicating with your team member and saying, what is it that you want to do? Because this role is going to require this. This is where this position is moving. And, I've seen this happen where the individual decided to leave the organization and go do something else. And in other cases, they decided to apply for another position within the company because it just wasn't really a good fit. But, I think you have to not be afraid to sit down and have that conversation. And what I see happen more than probably it should, but it's not surprising that it does, is that leaders just say, oh, okay, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. And then they find another person that'll do it. Normally the person that, maybe it's more your star employee that just takes on all these things. And then it ends up being a demotivating thing for this person because they feel like all they're doing is getting the work of other people that they don't want to do. Right. So it's, my advice always is sit down and figure out what does drive this person. Yeah. What does motivate this person? What does this person want to do? And, but also having the real talk of, there's also going to be some things you're going to have to do that you may not want. And then it's really going to be on that individual to decide, am I willing to do this or not? But, I think in the most part, because the reality is we all know we have to do things we don't want to do. If I feel like I'm getting to do things, there are things I am wanting to do, or I'm getting to be developed in the way I want to be developed, whatever that looks like for me. I don't necessarily want to be a leader with people, but am I getting to go, kind of up my skills and my game and whatever it is that I do. Right. I think it's, I think there's hope there, but it's, I just sometimes see it end at that one conversation of, I'm going to need you to do this. And the person's like, nah. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, so let's have a real deal. What's this about? What is preventing you from wanting to do this? Is it, so asking the deeper questions and that's part of a leader's job. But I know, sometimes they just want to avoid it and just look around like, okay, who else can take it? And, that's one way to deal with it, but
or I'll just keep it because it's easier for me to keep it. I think the point that you made about knowing your people is really important, which really comes back to that whole core thing about leadership, right? It's a people mission. It's not a process, and I think there are some people, at least in my experience too, that they don't want to lead other people. Like they don't want to be responsible for the people. And I think if we understood or made space for, I think we have an expectation that success is defined as like climbing this ladder, moving up to this list, this hierarchy, and then you're going to invariably be responsible for people and do that. But there are, to your point, other motivators that people have for their career and their life, and they can still be an effective leader right where they are, right, through peers and influencing and doing those kinds of things. And I think, like you said, the bottom line is just getting to know your people and the heart of them, and not putting a person in a position of leadership to manage people who doesn't want to do that, right? So that's not always a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when and if a person is saying, hey, I don't want to be responsible for these humans, then okay, that's fine. Don't force them into that position, but find another way to challenge them and still reward them and still grow them, even though it might not look like your normal organizational hierarchy. You've got these 3 ladders because there's a lot of other ways that you can do that. Yeah.
Yes. And and if they don't want to do any of that, and that's part of your culture and that's part of what it is, then that becomes another conversation about then what is it that you do want to do? And maybe I need to help you do that somewhere else. And, but people are so hesitant today to have those conversations because they need employees so bad.
Yeah.
So a lot gets left unaddressed. A lot gets left not held accountable because a body's better than nobody. Wow. And I think that we're going to see so many more challenges. And, I can hear leaders now, I do hear them. It's like, please, Lord, stop with the challenges, But I think that the challenge is going to be going back and holding people accountable because some organizations have let things go. They have let performance be status quo, subpar. They have let people, as you just described, say, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, well, I don't have time to find somebody else right now. So you showing up every day, just doing something is, again, better than nothing. Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot of leaders struggle with that, of just letting that go. And I know that's hard when if you let that person go, who knows how long it could be before you can find somebody to replace that person.
That's very true.
But I think that's creating even a bigger problem down the road of when, and the pendulum is going to swing back. I mean, it's not always going to be as far out as it is. So, when this does come back and it gets a little bit more equal to employee, companies aren't starving for individuals. They haven't got all these open job recs. It's, so, well, now we have to hold people accountable. But then we've created kind of this subculture thing within all of this of things that we accept and things that we don't accept.
Yeah.
And that's going to be super hard for leaders. So I just think standing strong in this, and I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying to, really be that entrusted to lead person. It's like sometimes you've got to do that hard stuff in the hard times.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the stuff that makes you stronger on the other side of it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the piece of that I go back to a lot, just from, my mom days or whatever, is like, don't hurt their hearts. So I think sometimes as a leader, we miss the person standing in front of us, right? Because we're busy with all the things, which is fine. So there's maybe a reason why that person doesn't want to do the thing, right? Fear of failure, fear of rejection, whatever it might be, or just not maybe being in a place where they have that, I guess, psychological safety or whatever we call it, where they can be transparent. So I think all of that starts left of launch, right? So as a leader, you have to build that bridge with that person so that they trust you enough to be able to lay those things on it. And if you come in every day and you're not really connected to your people and you don't really, have that kind of, it doesn't have to be intimate, right? Because that's a word we don't really like to talk about, intimacy in industry. Like, let's not talk about that. That could probably be a different podcast. But,
that could be very interesting.
That could be a whole, because but that's really what we're saying, right? Like just connecting with people on a human level and getting past their, like the stuff that's going on so that you can see the reason why maybe they're not, performing or they don't want to move forward or whatever. It's maybe, we default, like, I think over to the, like, well, they're lazy or they don't care or they're dismissive or blah, blah, blah. But 9 times out of 10 of my experience, and maybe I'm sure with yours too, it's a person on the other side of that table with a real heart, with real emotions, with real fears, with real life stuff going on with aging parents and kids and pandemics and COVID, and they got all this stuff going on. So I think if we just take a step back and have more empathy too, we can create a space where we can start to have those conversations. And then, like you said, when it comes to accountability time, then it's easier because I trust that you're here for my best interest, right?
Yes. Like I trust that you're not leading me down a path of something just because you don't want to do it or you think I should do it. It's, I will go that extra mile for you because I believe you would for me too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the same thing as you go back to like the exit strategy and the stay strategy and all those conversations. I have, in my experience, it's been really important. I've told a lot of people over the years, like, hey, if this is not the place for you, that's okay. But I genuinely do want to help you find what the next step is. I think that was in that Harvard Business Review article that you shared the other day, right? Like every employee has a shelf life. So you should make sure that, or something like that. I think it's what it said. But just the bottom line is like, they're not always going to stay forever. Those days of people staying in one company forever in one seat are probably over and should be, So how do we have that kind of growth mindset with our employees from the very beginning? Like, I think that's another piece too of really caring about the person, not just, the position that they're holding. So
yes, and it takes time to do that, and I love it when, I have leaders say, if they would just leave me alone in my office for however, I could just be so much more productive. And I just start laughing because I'm like, at the end of the day, the most important thing are your people. There is no other thing. I mean, you might think that report is the thing, but it isn't the thing. I mean, it's your people and how are you there for them? I mean, it's a lot like being a parent.
Yes.
A professional parent. I mean, and I don't mean that you're teaching them, you're developing them, you're supporting them, you're holding them accountable, you're having hard conversations. I mean, there is so much of what parenting teaches you to be a good leader with people. And I just think it's not being afraid to sit down. And as you said, I love the word intimate, but yeah, you're right. That would probably be an HR nightmare for right now, but it's true. I mean, it's, so maybe the better word is connect.
Connect.
And, how do we just let people know that we care and we are there for them? And so then it makes those conversations, I'm not going to say easy.
Yeah.
But I will say it makes them a little bit more effortless than effort to.
Yeah, that's true.
That when people trust in us.
Yeah, that's for sure. What a great conversation with Dr. Zoeller about all of those things surrounding the essence and elements of leadership. Join us on the next episode where we continue the conversation and we'll talk a little bit more about intimacy in leadership, some of the concepts framed in her new book, and we'll dive into her recommendations and tools that she uses to refocus. Thanks for listening to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. This podcast was brought to you by our amazing producers at Wildfire Creative Company. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please hop over to iTunes or Spotify, subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And make sure you come back we'll talk more about the essence and elements of leadership on the first and third Thursday of every month. If you enjoyed today's show, you can head over to danitacummins.com/podcast and gain access to additional free resources. But make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you can stay up to date on the latest shows. Have an amazing day. Talk to you soon.